problem from MyOpenMath section 2.3, and what I did is I put the origin. I didn't draw the x-axis, but the origin is where we start, and here's where we're headed, and then here's where Mount Rainier is, and they're asking us how long is it going to take to be the closest we're going to get to Mount Rainier. So then I said, well, let's see. I know the slope of this line, and if you think about it, I mean, the place where I'm going to be the closest is when this line segment meets that line at a right angle, right? So what I did is I wrote an equation of that line. Actually, I just found the slope. I said, y2 minus 0 over x2 minus 0, and then so it's that line there, and there's the slope of that line. And if I know this line segment is perpendicular to this line segment, I know that the slope of this line segment is the negative reciprocal of that. Okay, and then I said, okay, so let's calculate the slope of that line. Well, I said y minus 40 turned to plus 40, so there's the rise, and then x minus 56, there's the run. So I knew that those two were equal, and then what I did is I just wrote the cross product. Actually, what I'm doing is I'm writing a point slope form for the equation of this line, is where I ended up with. And then of course I subtracted 40, and that's where that 40 came from. And if I'm looking for where this line intersects this line, that'll let me find the x and the y, and then that's going to let me find that line segment, the length of that line segment. So what I did is I said this line equals this line, and then I converted it into decimals, and I distributed that through, and then I subtracted 40, and then I subtracted this from the side. It was about 2, negative 2, so I divided them, so I came up with x is equal to that. So the x coordinate of that point is this, and then I took that value, substituted it in for that x, calculated that, found that y, so that's the x and the y for that point. And then what I have going on is I've got just a right triangle, and I'm using the distance formula, Pythagorean theorem, and that's where I'm going to go next. So I'm just doing a squared, so I'm finding the differences in the x's, the differences in the x's, differences in the y's, squaring them. And what's kind of nice about the differences is if x1 is 0, 0 and y1 is 0, 0, it's just going to be 48 minus 0 squared and negative 47 minus 0 squared. So that's what I did with my calculator here. I just squared the x's, squared the y's. I didn't bother writing a negative because I knew when I squared the negative it turned positive. Added them together, I got that. I took the square root, so that's the distance from the origin to that point where, so that's that distance right there. Now this plane can fly 800 miles, 800 kilometers per hour, so I divided it by 800, and that's the number of hours it'll take to fly that distance. And then I multiplied it by 60, and that's what you can see is the answer. So I hope that helps you solve this. Kind of roundabout, but it's a good problem-solving problem.